Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:06 now. I talk for a living. 7:06 on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here and starting your day with us. At 7:35, we'll hear from Maryland State Delegate Szeliga. And then at 8:05, Brent Bozow has got a great story about a reunion with his son after his son got caught up in all the J6 lawfare. He's now pardoned. He's home, and we're getting back to normal. Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Joining us right now, Ian Pryor. He is a senior advisor at America First Legal, a dynamic organization that had a lot to do with the victories that we've seen over the last several years, including on Election Day. And I hope you enjoyed this inaugural address and the festivities as much as the rest of us.
Good morning. Yeah, no, I certainly have. It's been like Christmas morning the past 2 days.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I think it was so smart of President Trump to sort of continue to go back to this idea that this is a common sense agenda. These are common sense policies. Common sense, and there isn't anything more common sense than the executive order officially defining that there are two sexes, male and female, innies and outies, X's and Y's, and that's how that's science, right? But we were wondering, Ian, that's an executive order. It's obviously going to affect a lot of policy in D.C. and at the federal level. How does this now trickle down to, say, the Loudoun County school system, where they're still holding on to this anti-science, anti-logic, anti-common sense idea that boys can go into girls' rooms?
Well, it's going to carry down into their pocketbooks if they don't start making some changes. And it's not just Loudoun. It's Fairfax, Arlington, Alexandria,
Yes.
Prince William, all these Northern Virginia school systems that have these policies that say, you can use the bathroom or locker room of the sex you identify with. Now, you got to kind of go back about 10 years when this really started with the Obama administration saying that, well, we interpret Title IX's prohibition on discrimination of sex to include gender identity. And that got curtailed under the first Trump administration, then it came back under the Biden administration. But a lot of these schools have been changing these policies to essentially equate sex with gender identity. Now, what the problem that they're going to run into now is that the Trump administration this time has said enough's enough. And not only are we going to define sex as actual biological sex, but President Trump is instructing his departments, which includes the Department of Education, the Department of Justice, to enforce these rules on the basis of sex, which means that if you have a policy that says a boy can use a girl's room, well, what that means is that the female cannot feel safe and comfortable in a common restroom that the male can. That is sex discrimination. So that means what you are now doing is violating Title IX. And if an investigation were to happen and the Department of Education were to find that Loudoun or Arlington or Alexandria or Fairfax is violating Title IX, then they can pull their federal funding.
So, Ian, what do you anticipate in terms of, we know that the Democrats and especially these school officials, they love to hide these programs. They like to and they will just lie about things. Do you think that that's what we're going to see here, efforts to circumvent these laws or hide this from parents or changing it? Or what do you anticipate here? And the other question I have is, we're talking about the feds withdrawing funding from these schools who don't behave, but a lot of the funding comes from states. Well, that for education, most of it, the vast majority of funding for education is state funding. Will that also affect if they don't go along with this? Will that affect the state funding as well?
Well, in theory it could, because the Human Rights Act in Virginia is read essentially concurrently with Title IX. Mm-hmm. So it incorporates Title IX into its existence. So there's nothing now that would prevent the state from saying, you're in violation of the Human Rights Act, because we read the Human Rights Act coextensively with Title IX. Now, the Human Rights Act has gender identity in there, but that doesn't mean that sex doesn't take precedent, especially in Virginia, where it's literally defined in the Constitution that you shall not discriminate on the basis of sex, but it is not discrimination to separate on the basis of sex. So the state could take action as well. And as far as what the schools will do, I think it's going to be pretty tough to hide that when you've got investigators bearing down on you, as long as those investigations are serious and probing.
So, Ian, well, what do you say to individuals who may even agree with that, but at the same time say, listen, we don't want some president to just be able to go in, sit at the Resolute desk, and with the swipe of his pen, make a policy that's now going to affect everyone in the country all the way down to the granular level of a school board. Fine, if Trump won the presidential election and he wants to do that with federal employees and federal agencies, fine. But here in our county, in our state of Maryland or Virginia, we still want to have these policies, and we should be able to do that.
Well, you can do that. You just can't get the money. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's federal funding. It's a contract, right? So Title IX is a spending clause case or spending clause statute, which means that when you accept federal money, you have to go by federal law and federal rules. And if they don't want to accept the federal money, which I'm sure all of these superintendents will be more than happy to see their federal money go away, they could have, I guess, whatever policies they want. But they've got another problem here, which is not only is it potentially, is it a violation of Title IX, but it also could be a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. And so now we're not talking about the Department of Education so much as we're talking about the Department of Justice and the United States Constitution. And we've had several rulings, including from the Supreme Court over the past 6 months, that have said Title IX's definition of sex does not include gender identity. Yeah. So if you want to change that, you have to go to Congress. You've got to get your votes in the House, and you got to get your 60 votes in the Senate, which isn't going to happen. So, unfortunately for the people that may not, want to change these policies, the only option for them is really not to take the federal money, because ultimately this is a contract.
Speaking to Ian Pryor, he's senior advisor at America First Legal, and just on a broader picture here, a lot of these executive orders, for instance, birthright citizenship, people are going to say, oh, well, Trump just ended birthright citizenship. Well, no. What's going to happen is states are not going to sue, which they've already have. 17 states, I think, announced yesterday that they're going to sue the federal government on the birthright citizenship. It's going to go to a federal court. It'll go to appeals court. It'll go to the Supreme Court. Eventually, the Supreme Court will decide whether birthright citizenship ever existed in the Constitution or not. But that was the purpose of a lot of these executive orders, is to instigate this process and bring it on. Can you sort of talk about how America First Legal might be involved in that as well, or not, and involved in sort of amicus briefs or maybe legal counsel? And for that matter, will America First Legal also be sort of taking some of these executive orders and saying, okay, now we can start our own lawsuits with these executive orders and go and basically recorrect us back onto a path of common sense and where we should be, because the left has been doing this with their lawyers and their action groups for decades now?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You're going to see a lot of different things. I mean, I think you could potentially see the administration intervening in cases that are already existing, some cases that maybe we're involved in. I don't know that, for a fact, but that's something you could see. And then you could see the other side where places like America First Legal intervene or file amicuses in cases that the federal government initiates. In fact, just on Friday, a case that we filed an amicus brief, Mahmoud versus MCPS, the Supreme Court just granted certiorari, and that's a very important case. It has to do with Montgomery County Public Schools voting against or removing an opt-out for parents who wanted to opt out of the Rainbow Coalition or Rainbow Mafia books and curriculum at MCPS. And the school said, no, you can't do that. Well, the Supreme Court's going to review that under parental rights. Those are the kind of things you can see the federal government start bringing as well, which are going to be very important to start defining some of these things.
And it needs to be emphasized. It can't be overemphasized. The conservatives have not played this game. We've taken a back seat, or right. We've settled, or we've allowed settlements to happen.
Or we don't want to hurt feelings,
right? Or we don't. Yeah, and we don't. Or we think, well, the courts shouldn't be used for that. Well, the courts are being used for that. Right. So we need to get in there and play the game as well. Otherwise, you're standing on your principles, but you're standing on the sidelines, and that's why we're in such great admiration of Ian Pryor and the work that he has been able to do as an individual dad and also as part of the team at America First Legal. Ian, thank you so much, as always.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Julie.
It's 7.
WMAL. Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
My name's Larry O'Connor. I'm sitting next to Julie Gunlock. We're doing a radio program called O'Connor and Company. We do it every day, 5 to 9 in the morning. We also like going to restaurants.
Yes.
We like going to very nice restaurants.
Yes.
I don't know. Do you like Jose Andres restaurants? I mean, they're okay.
Look, I
haven't
know,
been to his what is it?
Minibar
Minibar Roses Luxury,
yeah.
isn't that one of his too?
I don't think Roses is
that
Roses
one of
Luxury.
Is it? That what is? I don't know. But
Anyway,
Minibar is definitely
I've
one
never
of
had
his.
it. He's very famous for his tapas. Haleo.
Haleo. I've been to Haleo in Bethesda.
Yeah, I've never
It's
been
good.
impressed.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's
no,
fine.
I've never been impressed.
It's overpriced, but I'm used to that
Really
in
small
DC.
portions. I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
let's top.
Kidding.
So there, it's okay. But Jose Andres, beyond charging, $70 for a little, 6-ounce filet mignon at his restaurants.
Yeah.
He also has gotten praise from many quarters for his work with the World, what do they call
World
it?
Food Kitchen or something.
World Food, yeah, I should probably have that in front of me, shouldn't I?
He's an absolute leftist tool, is what he is. And
He
he's
is.
very
He
politically
embraces
active.
every liberal cause.
And then he sort of cloaks himself in charity and good works, and he does do good works, but he also is used by the Democrats to push a message.
He allows himself. He
Absolutely.
participates in
Yes.
being when Trump won the White House the first time around, his restaurant was supposed to be part of the new Trump hotel.
That's right.
He made a big deal about pulling out. Well, I will not let my restaurant be a part of the Trump hotel. And of course, Jose Andres is Latino. He champions.
from Spain.
There's a lot of restaurateurs and chefs who get really freaked out about the immigration policies. Do you know why? Because they exploit illegal
Yes, they do.
immigrants.
Yes.
They hire illegal immigrants for slave wages to wash the dishes so that they can live and jet set around in really expensive and luxurious. Tom Colicchio, the guy who does Top Chef, is one of these guys too. It's like, terrible what you do. You can't deport these people. They wash our dishes.
I pay him $3.
They
to wash
bus
all my
our tables. What else are we going to do? It's so obvious what's going on here. So we're telling you all this about Jose Andres, and he just won like a Presidential Medal of Citizenship Freedom for his humanitarian work the other day from Biden. He also, by the way, if you remember, he threw Israel under the bus, claiming that Israel had targeted some of his restaurant workers in Gaza. Meanwhile, he literally had Hamas people working with his
and coordinates with
organization.
Hamas. Yeah, so.
He got the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Joe Biden because of all of his left-wing activism. Yesterday, Donald Trump had a message for Jose Andres.
You're fired.
You're fired. He fired him. He fired him from the Presidential Council on Health and Fitness, which, honestly, I mean, no offense to Jose Andres. Listen, if I were a big top chef master like he is, I would probably sample the calamari as it's going out the pass to table 7. But he's not really the picture of health and fitness, is he? I mean, what was he doing there?
I give him a pass on that because, I mean, he is a chef and he has to try a lot
He's
of
chunky.
things. But, yeah,
He's chunky. Can we say he's chunky?
But he's always showing up at these disaster areas and, then he gets a lot of media for them. This is not a man who does things quietly. This is a man who uses his charity work to promote his own restaurants and gain great wealth because of it. Again, he blames Israel. And I mean, what he said about Israel after that tragic, I really don't know the circumstances, but I know it wasn't Israel targeting his World Health members. I know that he was sidling up to Hamas and coordinating with them in Gaza because he goes into Gaza and he's like, I'm just feeding these starving people. I'm not feeding.
He was feeding
members.
terrorists.
He was feeding terrorists.
He was absolutely giving aid and
then
comfort
when there's
to
a
the terrorists.
strike that gets his people caught up in it, he blames Israel.
Right. This was, by the way, the notice. Let this serve as official notice of dismissal for these 4 individuals, with many more coming soon. Jose Andres from the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. Mark Milley from the National Infrastructure Advisory Council. Brian Hook from the Wilson Center for Scholars. And Keisha Lance Bottoms from the President's Export Council. You're fired. I literally said you're fired in his post on Truth Social. By the way, meanwhile, Chef Gruel has actually been doing incredible work helping the victims of the fires out there in Huntington Beach, California. He's turned his restaurant into a clearinghouse.
That's right.
For support and aid and all of these things.
And nobody knew about it, by the way. Chef Gruel was doing that for weeks, and no one knew about it. And then someone tweeted it, and then he got asked questions about it. Gruel often works quietly and does incredible things for the community that no one knows about.
Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, I believe a very wise old rabbi said back around. Oh, it was Jesus who said that. when you're giving charity. By the way, Jose Andres, I'd love to see what the budget is for PR and publicity agents and the people who are pushing his stories out there.
He's always hanging out also with celebrities. He was pictured.
Yeah, because he comps them at his restaurants.
Exactly. When Meghan and Prince Harry showed up at the disaster tourism they were doing last week or a couple weeks ago, he's sitting there hugging Meghan and hugging Prince. He loves being around celebrities.
Jose Andres, by the way, said, he didn't fire me, I quit, which is my favorite thing to say.
Exactly.
Most fired people say that. Jose Andres, no longer on that board. Maybe President Trump should look at Chef Gruel and see if he wants the gig.
Yes.
He would be great at it, and then that would get him into D.C. more, and he could open a restaurant here. Calico.
Like in the studio?
Yes, right here.
Right.
Chef Gruel could feed us every morning.
Breakfast tacos every morning.
7:23.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:36, O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. Coming up at 8:05, Brent Bozell, Media Research Center. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, and good morning to our guest, Maryland State Delegate Kathy Szeliga. As you know, they are in session in Annapolis, and as all good Marylanders know, that means it's time to hold on to your wallet, because apparently the state of Maryland, they just can't get enough of our tax dollars there. Kathy Szeliga, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for being on, Larry and Julie.
That said, Republicans actually, you guys seem to have found your voice a bit here in this session. You've got a little bit of a swagger, and you're starting to push back in a pretty significant way on some of these things. Talk to us first about how we can basically sort of hopefully undo what the state of Maryland has done with the electric vehicle mandates, since President Trump has now undone the EV mandates from the federal level. How is that going to translate down into Maryland?
Well, we're pushing hard. A part of the Maryland Freedom Caucus, a newly launched group in Annapolis, or better known as the Land of Make-Believe. And there's never a shortage of bad ideas there. They passed a law back when O'Malley was governor. Some would call it aspirational, others would call it insane, that would say by 2027 car year model, which means not this summer, but the next summer is when those cars come out, 43% of the vehicles on a dealer's lot have to be electric, not hybrid, electric.
Well,
so that's how they.
How are they exactly going to do that? I mean, if they're a Honda dealer, let's say, and Honda doesn't make an EV, are they just going to go out of business? They're going to have a little part of their lot where they're going to bring a Tesla in? Has anyone thought this through at the state of Maryland?
Well, it is the land of make-believe, Larry.
Yeah.
You have to know that. And unicorns and rainbows. So, yes. So Governor Moore in 2023, with the stroke of his pen, he delayed it because I think it was supposed to be the cars coming to the dealer lots this summer. So he delayed it by a year. And we are saying just get rid of scrap the whole thing. Yeah. 43% of the auto dealers' lot, the cars they purchase from manufacturers have to be EV. So that's how they're getting around like the communist consumer choice issue. They're putting it on car dealers, which we know will put Maryland car dealers out of business. The Virginia car dealers are applauding, although, there's crossover and they're probably friendly competition. So consumers are just going to go buy their car somewhere else. And who did their socialist policies always hurt the worst? Poor people.
Of course.
Poor people can't go to Virginia to buy a gas car because, they can't afford an EV. Plus, where are they going to charge it, right?
Yeah.
Where do you charge 43% of vehicle inventory in the state of Maryland?
It's insanity.
Well, and just when, Trump is elected and people are starting to feel a little bit hopeful about the future, maybe their taxes will come down, maybe they'll have more money in their pockets, maybe, their home budgets will finally start to reduce. There's now talk that Governor Moore wants to drop more taxes on Marylanders. Wes Moore, frankly, in the last couple of weeks, it seemed a little bit more, I don't know, reasonable. He was seen at the Army-Navy game, right, when most Democrats stayed away. This past week, he was seen at an inaugural ball. That feels like good signs for, maybe he's going to be reasonable. Do you have any hopes of this, that he'll drop this really bad idea?
Well, Julie, the tax, of course, on quote unquote millionaires, they tried that under O'Malley, and they put a sunset on it. So they were like, well, this grand experiment, we'll have to renew the law in 3 years. Well, the millionaires left. Shocker.
Yeah.
They went to Virginia, they went to Florida, North Carolina, Delaware. So now, the definition of insanity, right? Do the same thing over and over and expect different results. They're going to leave. So that is a terrible proposal. But then once again, getting back to socialism hurts poor people because, you run out of rich people's money pretty quick. 75 cent delivery tax on every delivery comes to your house. With an automatic escalator tied to CPI. So an autopilot increase in a delivery tax.
Yeah. Well, listen, Wes Moore wants to go live at 1600 Pennsylvania. Wes Moore is running for president in 2028. So he might be changing some of his policies just so he can have a record that's more amenable to states that he's going to have to win. The problem is he has to get the Democrat nomination, Kathy Szeliga, which means he has to be a socialist. So this is going to be very interesting to see how he tries to maneuver this and then not be the socialist that his party wants him to be, yet at the same time somehow get that nomination. Meanwhile, as you said, the state-level Liberty Caucus is now formed and going, and it's got to help you in Maryland, the fact that the chairman of the federal Freedom Caucus in the House of Representatives is Maryland's own Andy Harris.
Yes, that was a huge help for us. Andy Harris is doing a great job in D.C. and was instrumental in helping us get the Maryland Freedom Caucus launched. We're the 13th state. There's a move to have state-level Freedom Caucus network or state Freedom Caucuses as part of this network where we can share ideas. But we'll see what Wes Moore does on this EV mandate. A stroke of his pen, he could change it today at this afternoon. The Senate and the House committees that work on environmental issues are going to have a briefing on this issue. So, if lawmakers in Annapolis or the governor do not take this up, how many auto dealers are going to go out of business?
Yeah.
God.
Also, by the way, and while he's thinking of that, Wes Moore is trying to implement a delivery tax. One thing that's been working since COVID is the increase in deliveries, home deliveries. People are getting their groceries delivered at home, things like that. It's working. It's a sub-economy, a gig economy for some people. People are making money. People have convenience. So, of course, Maryland, under Governor Wes Moore, says, well, let's tax it and screw that up. Does that have legs?
Whenever we find something working, let's tax it.
Oh, yeah. And think, again, who did these policies hurt? Senior citizens.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law doesn't drive anymore. So she has to have a lot of her things delivered to her house. And she lives on a fixed income. She can't join the gig economy. She's 89. They can't print money. So this is really going to hurt senior citizens, families who, like you said, COVID was horrible. But there were a couple of good things. One is deliveries and being able to get things to your house without, having to go get them. And now they want to charge 75 cents with a completely immoral automatic increase every year that lawmakers don't have to vote on.
Kathy Szeliga, don't sell your mom out. 89 years old, she can totally join the gig economy. I'm thinking she should start a YouTube channel. She can start ranting into the camera, maybe tell some jokes.
Well, my mom is, I won't tell her age, but close to that age. And she still drives, and that's my mother-in-law. My mom could join the gig economy. She could come probably make your garden look lovely, but I don't think she wants to.
I think it's a great discipline for me not to mention OnlyFans as an option in this scenario as well. Well, there's an audience for everybody.
Don't laugh at him.
Thank you, Delegate Szeliga. Always good to talk with you.
Right.
It's 7:45. WMAL traffic and weather. What?
You are unbelievable.
If she needs.
Stop.
Jamie Witten's in the Hadig Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
Zip, zip. Julie's like, stop. All right, let's go 395. Larry, we love you.
This headline from the New York Post is delightful. Are you ready? Unemployed Kamala Harris's neighbors annoyed by her return to L.A. In fact, every mention of Kamala Harris now in the New York Post begins with unemployed
That's
Kamala
what we should
Harris.
do.
She has no job.
It's like I was saying with Dana Bash. We can't just call her Dana Bash. We have to say clueless.
Clueless or consistently confused, perpetually confused.
Yes. I love this.
Unemployed Kamala Harris's neighbors are annoyed at her return to Los Angeles. She lives. I thought she lives up in San Francisco. Oh, but Dougie lives down in Beverly Hills, so they got their place down there.
This is disaster tourism, much like Meghan Markle.
Well, she lives there, and she doesn't have a house. She doesn't live on Wisconsin or Massachusetts anymore.
She doesn't have a role in the government anymore, Larry.
Her neighbors in Brentwood in northern Los Angeles, which is, by the way, where Andrew Breitbart used to live. I love this idea that Andrew would have been neighbors with Kamala at this point. Newly unemployed politicians' would-be triumphal entry brought jeers from some neighbors and more traffic.
Where was she when she was a vice president? Where was she, right?
She lived here. She never went back to California. Are you kidding?
But, she kind of has some stuff, like some planes at her disposal. She could have gone.
I don't care that she's back, except that they block off the road whenever she comes to town, said one resident. Oh, imagine John Bolton's neighbors. Oh, they're happy now. We wanted to come out and just let people know that we see them and that they're cared for, she told reporters from the L.A. County Fire Station hours after landing at LAX. They went right to Altadena there. And they served meals at the World's Central Kitchen, run by,
of course,
the recently fired Jose Andres. Next morning, Harris herself was nowhere to be seen. At least four black SUVs guarded the $4.8 million home of the failed presidential candidate, while Secret Service personnel in earpieces and sunglasses
late night with her boxed wine.
Yeah, there she is. Oh, do you want to hear her word salad, by the way, as she was speaking with the firefighters in Los Angeles?
Strangers who, in the face of that stranger, they see a neighbor. These are folks who understand the strength and the value of community, which is everyone coming together with a shared sense of purpose and identity as a community of people.
As a community are people coming together as a community. Wow.
What I love the most about, and again, I want to just admonish everyone, don't immediately call this word salad, because salad has some nutritional value. I mean, at the very least, to clean out your colon. I get the opposite effect when I hear her talk. I feel a little stopped up. There's nothing freeing about this. It's not salad. It's worse than salad.
The point isn't the nutritional value. The point is it was tossed. It's all tossed together. There's no. Yes.
I understand.
Okay.
The imagery. I just like to. Anyway, my favorite part about this, when she does this, you can hear the self-satisfaction in her voice, because she is so sure that she is delivering such profundity to the universe that it's like, as I say these things, I am so impressed with myself, almost as impressed as you should be with me.
If you close up on her, if you had one of those really good lenses, and you could see the goosebumps on her skin.
That she is giving herself.
Yes.
As she's
and if you listen really hard, you can hear the soundtrack going in her own mind.
The background music, the stirring background music
Wings
to her.
Beneath. I'm not going to sing, but
her Dr. King-worthy oratory.
Yes.
And I wanted to come by, most importantly, to thank them, those who have volunteered and have brought people together and have sacrificed so much, and our firefighters. And I mentioned to these firefighters the fact that California firefighters, time and time again, prove themselves to be the best.
Sure.
Bullet dodged yet again. 7:53.